When the dispute over territories began, the Anunnaki divided the earth into different regions. The first region, in Mesopotamia, was given to Enlil and his sons. The second region, in Egypt and Nubia, was given to Enki and his sons. The third region, in the Indus Valley, was given to Inanna. The fourth region, Tilman, in the Sinai Peninsula, was the region of the gods, the land of the missiles, and the forbidden place where only the Anunnaki could access. Marduk, son of Enki, known as Ra in Egypt, after the Pyramid Wars, where he was left to die inside the Great Pyramid, was furious. He could not understand why Inanna could have a region all to herself. Thus, Marduk proclaimed himself as the only god and commander of the earth. The other Anunnaki gathered in assembly and then decided to use the weapons of terror, the terrible nuclear weapons. Thus, in 2024 BCE, there was a nuclear explosion in the Middle East region. And so, in a wave of destruction, Nergal completely annihilated the 5 cities of the valley, which quickly turned into desolation. They were razed by fire and sulfur, and everything that lived there turned into vapor. With such terrible weapons, the mountains came down, and the barrier that held the waters of the sea broke. The sea waters spilled into the valley, and the valley was flooded by the waters. When the waters poured over the ashes of the cities, steam rose to the skies. From high on his ship, Nergal shouted, "It is done." And so, in his heart, Nergal, now known as Era, had no more vengeance. He had done what he planned. Inspecting their evil work, Ninurta and Nergal were confused by what they saw. The splendors were followed by the darkening of the skies, and soon after the storm blew. Inside a dark cloud, whirlwinds formed in the sky and an evil wind rose, plunging the sky into twilight. As the day went on, the sun disappeared and darkness took over the horizon. Night came, and with it a dreadful splendor highlighted its edges, causing the moon to disappear, swallowed up in a dense cloud of destruction. When dawn came the next day, coming from the west, from the upper sea, a wind of a dense storm began to blow, and then the dark brown cloud moved east, heading towards the inhabited lands. The dark brown cloud traveled, and wherever it went, it brought the death of everything that was, without any mercy. From the valley of no pity, the cloud of death was carried to the lands of Sumer. Ninurta and Nergal gave the alarm to Enki and Enlil. They announced, "The evil wind is relentless, and it will bring death to all." Enlil and Enki transmitted the alarm to the gods of Sumer with a clear message: "Escape, escape." They shouted to all. The frightened gods fled from their cities and quickly ascended to the heavens. The message to the people was clear: scatter and hide as quickly as possible. The inhabitants of the lands fell under the claws of the evil wind, and their fugue was completely useless. Death was silent, and like a ghost, it attacked all fields, all lands, and all cities. The winds of death passed through the thickest walls like the waters of a flood. There was no door that could keep the wind away. Those who hid inside their houses, and with the doors closed, were swept away. And thus, like flies, they fell to the ground. The streets were piled with bodies, and the mouths of those trying to survive overflowed with saliva and foam, and then the blood came with a premonition of death. Slowly, the evil wind blew over all the lands and crossed from west to east over plains and mountains and annihilated everything that lived. After its passage, nothing was left alive. The waters, once clear, were poisoned, and in the fields all vegetation wilted. From Eridu in the south to Sippar in the north, the evil wind devastated the country. In the second region, all lands south of Babylon were devoured by the evil wind, which also reached the heart of the second region. But ironically, the sacred Babylon, from where Marduk had declared his supremacy, was spared by the evil wind. And from there, where Marduk and his followers had declared command of the whole earth, everything continued as if nothing had happened. Assailed by his thoughts and numbed by his doubts, Enki made a decision. He said to himself, "Everything that happened needs to be recorded, from the beginning on Nibiru until this day on Earth, and that in posterity, at the time chosen by destiny, the Earthlings read this record and can remember the past to understand the prophecies of the future. Let the future be the judge of the past." Thus, Enki waited for the appropriate time, and on the 17th day of the second month of the 7th year, after the great calamity, he called for 2 emissaries. He clarified that his chosen one to record the information was a scribe, son of Udbar, a man of Eridu, named Endubsar, the master scribe. "My name is Endubsar, also known as the master scribe. I have come to report an event that occurred in the second month of the 7th year after the great calamity. On the 17th day, I was summoned by Enki, the great god and master. I was in the city of Eridu and had survived the evil wind. I wandered through the desert in search of dry branches to make a fire when I noticed a reddish whirlwind approaching from the south. It made no sound. As the spacecraft touched the ground, 4 wide feet emerged, and the once beautiful equipment lost its allure. Overwhelmed with reverence, I prostrated myself on the ground. When I looked up, I saw 2 emissaries standing near me. Their clothes radiated a brilliant light. They called out to me, saying, "Endubsar, Endubsar. The great god, Lord Enki, summons you. Do not be afraid. You have remained pure, and we are here to take you with us, above the earth." At that moment, the whirlwind rose, resembling a blazing fire. Each emissary held one of my hands and swiftly lifted me. Suspended between earth and sky, I beheld the waters, plains, and mountains. Suddenly they released their grasp, and I felt as if I were falling to the ground, devoid of life spirit. A voice then called out, repeating my name, "Endubsar, Endubsar." I listened intently, unsure of its origin or the speaker's identity. The voice continued, revealing that I am a descendant of Adapa and had been chosen to serve as a scribe. I was to transcribe the divine words onto tablets. Before me, I could see a workspace with a scribe's table adorned with intricately carved stones. The mysterious voice persisted, addressing me as Endubsar, servant of Eridu, and declaring, "I am Enki, your god, your lord. I am concerned, which is why I have summoned you. The great calamity has befallen humanity, devastating our cities. I desire to document the truth of these events, ensuring that both gods and men understand what has occurred. Since the Great Flood, no catastrophe of this magnitude has transpired. Yet here we are, 7 years later. This should not have happened. I, Enki, have failed. Despite my efforts to prevent it, I have faltered. Was it fate or destiny? Only the future can judge. The earth will tremble, rivers will change their course, and daylight will be shrouded in darkness. The sky will be ablaze, and on this fateful day, the return of the celestial god will be sealed. Some will survive, while others will not. Thus, the cycle of repetition shall be sealed. For these reasons, Endubsar, I, your Lord Enki, have called upon you. The future remains veiled within the past. Among the gods, 40 is my sacred number. Therefore, for 40 days and 40 nights, I will speak and you shall transcribe. Throughout this time, you shall neither eat nor drink. Sustenance shall be derived solely from water and bread, enabling you to devote yourself to your task. The voice fell silent once again, and my surroundings became clearer. Before me, there was a plate with bread and a goblet filled with water. Enki instructed me, saying, "Endubsar, consume this bread and drink this water. It shall sustain you for the next 40 days and nights." I followed the instructions diligently. Then I was questioned, "Endubsar, Master Scribe, what do you see?" "I see smooth tablets of pure blue, resembling the sky, and a stylus." Enki said, "Endubsar, this is a distinct material. The tablets are smooth, made of lapis lazuli, and the stylus is a divine creation. Its body is composed of electron, while the tip is crafted from a divine crystal. The material easily adapts to your hand, allowing you to record effortlessly, akin to shaping damp clay." Upon touching the instruments, I sensed a divine energy enveloping my being. Then the great god Enki commenced speaking. His words were exquisite, at times weighty, bitter, and sorrowful, while also radiant and joyous. Countless tablets were inscribed, one after another, on all their surfaces. The most remarkable revelation relayed to me pertained to creation, genetic engineering, and manipulation. It was at that moment when Enki, the great god, interrupted my sensations, stating, "For 40 days and 40 nights you have recorded my words. Your task here is complete. Now, take another tablet and document your testimony." Although I couldn't behold the great god, I seized the tablet and inscribed this testimony that you are presently enjoying. And Enki, the great god, continued, "In due time, the tablets will be discovered, for the future is concealed within the past. There shall exist a book of past testimonies and a book of future predictions. You must safeguard the tablets in this secure enclosure and seal it shut. As for you, Endubsar, you have had the privilege of conversing with a great god, despite not having seen me. You are pure and shall act as my representative before the people. Instruct them to embrace justice, as a lengthy life is founded upon it. In 70 years, cities will be rebuilt, and crops will flourish once more. Peace will surely prevail, though wars will also occur. Know that the ancient gods will depart, and the new gods will decree destiny. At the culmination of days, fate shall triumph, for the future is foretold in the past. Endubsar, you must share all of this with the people." Upon this pause, I, Endubsar, prostrated myself to the ground. I inquired, "How will I know what to say?" The great god Enki replied, "The words you must utter will come to you in dreams and visions, and there shall be other chosen prophets as well. Ultimately, a new earth and a new heaven shall emerge. Following this, prophets will no longer be necessary." A silence followed, and the auras faded away. When I regained awareness, I found myself in the fields surrounding the city of Eridu. This was the story of the prior times and the use of weapons of terror. Before these prior times, there was the beginning. And after the prior times, there were the olden times. In the olden times, the Anunnaki descended from the heavens to earth and created the earthlings. However, in the olden times, there were no gods on earth, and earthlings had not yet come into existence. It is within these olden times that we find the genesis of all history, and it is this beginning that unravels all mysteries. What I'm about to share with you pertains to the planet Nibiru and the fortunes and destinies that awaited the Anunnaki. Nibiru is a planet with a wide orbit. it appears as a large reddish celestial body, making its extended journey around the sun. At times, Nibiru experiences cold, while at others, the bright sun once again shines upon it. The planet's thick atmosphere is sustained by ongoing volcanic eruptions. During the cold period, the atmosphere retains heat, acting as a protective covering for the entire planet. In the warm period, the atmosphere shields Nibiru. During the transitional periods between heat and cold, rainfall intensifies, ensuring the continuity of lakes and rivers. Nibiru is adorned with abundant vegetation that nourishes and safeguards the atmosphere. From this vegetation, diverse forms of life emerge in both water and on land. The Anunnaki species naturally came into existence, like an eternal seed, destined to proliferate. Over time, the Anunnaki multiplied and settled in valleys, plains, and mountains. They built homes, established communities, and civilizations began to flourish. It was during this era that conflicts and rivalries arose, culminating in the first war between the northern and southern nations. Vegetation transformed into formidable weapons, and civilizations gave rise to armies. Eventually, missiles were launched, and a prolonged and ferocious battle ensued between brothers. Death and destruction swept across the northern and southern lands alike. Destruction consumed all of Nibiru. Desolation prevailed on Nibiru for a considerable period. It was not a single event, nor did it occur twice. There were several orbits, and then a decision was made to declare a truce. Soon, cries for peace resonated everywhere as nations aimed to unite under a single throne on Nibiru. It was agreed that there would be one king to rule them all. The chosen king was to come from either the north or the south, while a consort would be selected from the opposite region. This arrangement aimed to unite the north and south through the figures of the king and queen. The husband and wife were considered as one entity, and their child born from their union would be the successor, establishing a dynasty. The selected ruler was a formidable warrior and commander from the north, bestowed with the title of An, which signifies celestial. Consequently, order was restored in the lands, accompanied by the establishment of laws and regulations, and successfully unified the territories, restored canals, constructed cities, and ensured prosperity and order. His wife, chosen from the south as agreed, was granted the title of Antu, denoting the wife of An. An and Antu had 3 children, with Anki being the firstborn. Despite the arrival of concubines in the palace, Anki remained the sole occupant of the throne, as the concubines did not bear him any children. Thus, the nascent dynasty came to an end soon after his death. The next in line was the middle son, who, despite not being the eldest, was named the rightful heir. He was given the title of Anib, signifying his position as the one in the middle among his brothers. Anib married Ninib, referred to as the Lady of Ib. Together, they had a son named Anshargal, who would become the successor to the throne, becoming the 4th king to rule Nibiru. His wife, Kishargal, was his half-sister. During Anshargal's reign, one of his most significant legacies was the study of Nibiru, leading to the establishment of the Shar, a unit of time. The Shar was divided into 10 parts, and 2 festivities were declared. One when Nibiru was closest to the sun, and another during its farthest and coldest phase. These celebrations aimed to unite the people, as both the northern and southern regions benefited from them. It was during the reign of Anshargal and Kishargal that laws were created regarding marriage, inheritance, and customs for the first tribes to follow. The laws were codified, stating that an official wife should be chosen, referred to as the first wife. According to the law, the firstborn child would inherit their father's position. Conflicts, disputes, and wars inevitably emerged. questions arose concerning the legitimacy of the successor if the firstborn was not from the first wife, but rather the second son. This issue led to debates and turmoil. In Anshargal's reign, concubines were once again introduced into the royal palace, resulting in the birth of sons and daughters. Later, the legitimate wife, Kishargal, gave birth to a son. By law, the child of Anshargal and Kishargal was the rightful heir, despite not being the eldest. Kishargal, the true and lawful wife of Anshargal, exclaimed angrily, "If according to the norms, my son from a firstborn wife is deprived of succession, we must not neglect the double seed. Although the king and I are descended from the same father, Anib through different mothers, the king being my half-brother and myself being his half-sister, my son carries the double seed of our father. Therefore, let the law of the seed prevail over the law of marriage in matters of succession. Let the son of a half-sister, regardless of birth order, rise above others in the line of succession." Upon hearing Kishargal, the king's wife and half-sister, Anshargal the king, decided to adopt the law of seed for succession. As a result, their son, despite not being the firstborn, was proclaimed the next king. This decision resolved the issue of legitimacy between a lawful wife and a concubine. The new king was bestowed the title of Anshar, becoming the fifth ruler of Nibiru's throne. Anshar also took a half-sister named Kishar as his wife. Even if Anshar had children from concubines, the rightful heir would be the offspring of the king and queen. During Anshar's reign, the fields experienced reduced harvests, and fruits and cereals lost their abundance. The problems persisted and worsened with each passing cycle. Seeking answers, sages and scholars were summoned to investigate the cause. Some believed it was Nibiru's destiny, a recurring event. Others suggested that a hole had formed in the atmosphere, causing a decrease in volcanic activity and rendering Nibiru's protective shield less efficient. Under these circumstances, Enshar, the sixth king, ascended the throne. Enshar, the son of Anshar and Kishar, was titled the Noble Master of the Shar. Enshar engaged in extensive studies, exploring other planets and atmospheres in search of a solution. He bestowed different names upon the planets to honor their ancestors. Enshar referred to the region near the sun as the Hammered Bracelet, emphasizing its protection against intruders through various asteroids. Despite Enshar's efforts and research, the hole continued to expand with each passing cycle. The scholars convened to discuss possible remedies, yet a viable solution seemed elusive. Some proposed artificially stimulating volcanoes to induce eruptions. Unfortunately, during Enshar's reign, the hole persisted and grew, casting a curse-like shadow over Nibiru. Rainfall diminished, winds intensified, and springs ceased to flow. Thus, Duru ascended to the throne. He was the son of the king, but not the queen's son. Enshar married Ninshar, but they had no children together. Eventually, one of the concubines bore Enshar a son, and thus Duru, the son of Enshar and a concubine, assumed control of Nibiru. Duru, lacking the royal bloodline, seemed to be disregarded due to this fact. However, when choosing his first wife, he did not adhere to the tradition of selecting a half-sister based on lineage. Instead, his choice was driven by love. Confusion ensued. In the royal palace, children did not inherit the throne, and wives were not required to be half-sisters. Adding to this perplexity, the king's sons and daughters were not even being born. The royal disorder had spread far and wide, much like the expanding hole in Nibiru's atmosphere. Desperate to find a solution, Duru, the seventh seed of An, along with his wife Dauru, decided to adopt a boy. They named him Lama and declared him the rightful heir, subsequently making him king. Lama differed from his father, Duru. Although he was the seventh seed of An, Lama did not descend from rulers. The troubles in the royal palace on Nibiru continued to increase. Eventually, sages and scholars arrived at a solution. They exclaimed, "Gold, gold." They proposed that by grinding gold into a fine powder and dispersing it in the air, it could create a protective barrier to seal the gap in Nibiru's atmosphere. According to the sages, gold was abundant in the hammered bracelet, and this marked the beginning of constructing spaceships. Another group suggested a more aggressive approach, proposing the use of terror weapons, launching missiles into volcanoes to stimulate their activity. However, Lama, the king of Nibiru, remained inactive and took no action. And so, Nibiru continued to count the passing years, one Shar, then another Shar. Conflicts escalated throughout the kingdom, and resources such as food and water became scarce. Sages and advisors frequented the royal court, but the king disregarded their counsel and only heeded his wife Lahama. The third and fourth Shar came and went, and the count reached a staggering 14,400 years in Earth's time. Let us beseech the Creator of all things. Let us implore rather than act. It is our fate, advised the king's wife. Yet, the people, sages, and advisors grew desperate. Something needed to be done. If the king won't act, then let us take action. We need a decision, a resolution, exclaimed the crowd in protest. And it was a prince who first laid hands on the weapons. Rebellion erupted within the royal court as he proclaimed the arrival of a new era and encouraged others to follow him. This prince's name was Alalu. He said, "Lama shall no longer be the king. From now on, I will be. Let's attack the king and make him leave the throne." The princes followed, and a chase began inside the palace. Finally, at the tower, Alalu found Lama and faced him in a battle where only one of the two would survive. The warrior Alalu emerged victorious and proclaimed himself the king, disregarding any advisors or laws. Alalu is now the new king. Alalu's claim was not without controversy. While Lama was at least an adopted son from one of the generations of An, the legitimacy of Alalu's rule was questionable. Who was Alalu? He was neither a legitimate heir nor the firstborn, but he defended himself by arguing that he possessed the royal seed. Alalu was summoned to explain his lineage to the seven who judge. And then came the surprising revelation. Anshargal was his offspring, directly descended from An, the Celestial. Alalu said, "I must remind everyone about the significance of the royal seed. Millennia ago, during the reign of Anshargal and his wife Kishargal, the law of the seed was established. The first beneficiary of this rule was Anshar, the son of Anshargal and Kishargal, the rightful heir to the throne. Before Anshargal's legitimate son was born, my ancestor Alam, son of Anshargal and a concubine, came into the world. I, Prince Alalu, bear the royal seed, which the now deceased prince did not possess. It is important to note that Lama was adopted. Alalu boldly declared that the law of the seed held no meaning. It was a law created to usurp the throne from its true heir, the eldest son of Anshargal, named Alam, my forefather. I am descended from his seed, and therefore the Nibiru throne is rightfully mine." The seven who judge pondered Alalu's words and referred the matter to the Council of Counselors. Records were consulted, but Alam's name was nowhere to be found. "But I am your descendant," proclaimed Alalu. "I, Alalu, possess the royal offspring. The law of succession has been replaced by the law of the seed, created to deny the true heir their royal rights." Upon hearing Alalu's impassioned plea, the counselors demanded that Alalu swear an oath, pledging his life and death to his claim. Thus, Alalu was crowned the king of Nibiru. All other important positions were notified of the decision, but one prince raised an objection. He claimed to be a descendant of An, preserving the divine seed within him. His name was Anu, and he presented evidence of his family tree. "I am Anu, descended from the seed of An." Many voices supported Anu's claim, suggesting he should be the king. However, others urged caution, insisting that Alalu should also be consulted, and Alalu opened his arms to receive Anu, the prince. Alalu said, "We are from different lineages, but we possess the royal seed. Together, we will restore abundance to Nibiru. May I retain the throne while you secure the succession. Let Anu be the crown prince and my rightful successor. To unify this succession, let your son marry my daughter." Thus, by unanimous agreement, Alalu remained on the throne. He ordered the construction of more celestial ships to search for gold in the hammered bracelet. However, it was reported that none of the ships had returned from there. "Then," he commanded, "hurl the weapons of terror so that Nibiru's bowels may open and the volcanoes stir." And so it was done. Mountains swayed, valleys shuddered, yet the rain refused to fall and the winds gusted. In the royal palace, Anu was treated as a servant of Alalu, instead of being acknowledged as the prince he was. Furthermore, the people of Nibiru no longer worshipped their king in the cities. Instead of providing relief, Alalu brought only misery. Nevertheless, he clung to the throne. It was in the 9th Shar when Anu presented a challenge to Alalu, a completely unarmed combat. That was when Alalu bent his knees and fell to the ground, defeated in the combat. By acclamation, Anu was proclaimed the new king and escorted to the palace. However, Alalu did not return. He feared his impending death, as well as the fate of his predecessors whom he had executed. Escaping through the crowd, he sought out one of the celestial ships armed with projectiles. Upon entering the ship, he activated all the controls and departed. Unbeknownst to anyone, Alalu escaped from Nibiru in a celestial ship, embarking on a journey to a distant and unknown planet. On Nibiru, exile was certain, and death was likely. Above, in the safety of his celestial ship, Alalu observed the planet Nibiru, a colossal sphere suspended in the void. The glow of volcanic eruptions, although fainter, still flickered, casting an exuberant radiance. Its magnificent fullness adorned the skies of distant worlds. Like an eagle, Alalu scanned the heavens, marveling at the beauty of the planet that had given him life. Controlling his celestial ship, he turned his gaze toward the vastness of space, with Nibiru receding behind him. On one side, darkness stretched into space, while on the other, the giant of volcanic eruptions disappeared into the depths of the great dark sea. Gradually, the worlds and atmospheres that King Enshar had studied and named after their ancestors came into view. Little Gaga, known as Pluto, extended a welcoming sight. Then celestial Antu, the bluish and sparkling Neptune, made its presence felt, offering a favorable omen with its exuberant hue born of pristine waters. Enchanted by the beauty yet steadfast in his course, Alalu encountered Uranus, the planet dedicated to An, emanating a blue-green glow. However, fate led him toward a similar path as the first prince of heaven, Anshar. The rings of Saturn appeared, resplendent and enchanting, casting a spell on the celestial ship. Alalu admired the rings of this beautiful planet, which would later be named Saturn by humans. Suddenly, an ill omen cast a shadow over his heart. A colossal presence obstructed the sun, enveloping his entire ship in an icy twilight. It was the gigantic planet Kishar, now known as Jupiter. Swirling storms blended different shades across its surface, and it seemed as though Kishar provoked intense lightning. Alalu became disoriented amidst the immensity, losing his sense of direction for a brief moment. Regaining awareness of his mission, Alalu turned his gaze to the distant sun as Kishar gradually receded into the distance. However, his entire being trembled, and fear of death gripped the warrior Alalu. It was the hammered bracelet, a cluster of rocks and stones assembled like abandoned children. Enshar had mentioned that this region was guarded by a vast asteroid belt. All the Anunnaki who had attempted to traverse the region before had perished, their ships swallowed by the rocks like wild and ravenous lions. Alalu sensed the presence of other Anunnaki and witnessed every explosion, each representing the demise of an Anunnaki ship. Driven by the fear for his life, the valiant warrior Alalu summoned his courage. He would not give up easily. If the secret was indeed true, if his ancestors had not deceived or erred, then the discovery of gold awaited, and the glory of a celestial reign was within reach. Thus, Alalu engaged in a fierce confrontation with the rocks. He stoked the ship's firestones and unleashed a deadly missile that collided with the rocks, causing them to clash against each other. The weapons of terror were then launched into space. "Open up to your king. I am Alalu, a warrior from Nibiru, equipped with a ship, weapons, and missiles. Nothing shall impede my path. Glory is my destiny. A celestial reign has been prepared for me." As Alalu uttered the spell, the hammered bracelet opened like a gate, revealing a path of immense darkness among the rocks. Venturing through the hall within the bracelet, Alalu could feel the weight of his destiny. He was the sole survivor among the Anunnaki who had dared to undertake this journey. With determination, Alalu swiftly crossed the sixth planet, which the celestial gods called Mars due to its reddish-brown appearance. His path now led him towards the sun, and suddenly he beheld the new world. The planet was divided into 3 distinct regions, snow-covered white at the poles, with blue and brown in between. Without a doubt, it was the legendary Ki, the 7th planet. Alalu circled the planet, observing its land masses and oceans. Eager to explore further, he activated his equipment to examine the depths. The penetrating ray was directed downward, and what he discovered surprised him greatly. The rays revealed abundant gold, shimmering brilliantly. I found it! I found it!" exclaimed Alalu. However, his excitement soon gave way to fear as he realized the perilous situation he faced. How could he land safely? Landing on dry land might cause his craft to explode, leading to his demise. On the other hand, landing in water might sink him into oblivion. Time seemed to slip away, leaving little opportunity for a decision. The gravitational pull grew stronger, causing Alalu's spacecraft to tremble. The atmosphere felt oppressively hot, thinner than that of Nibiru, with weaker gravitational forces. Then, without warning, the celestial ship shook violently. The impact was imminent, and Alalu's heart clenched in agony. A deafening bang echoed through the air, accompanied by flashes of light. The ship landed, and Alalu was thrust into unconsciousness, rendered completely motionless and inert. In the realm devoid of time, Alalu gradually regained awareness. He discovered that he had survived the ordeal. It was at this moment that the first Anunnaki set foot on Earth, or as they called it, the planet Ki. Returning to full consciousness, Alalu surveyed his surroundings. His craft had descended on dry land near vast marshes. Clad in a fish-like suit and an eagle's helmet, he emerged from the ship, taking his first steps in this new world. He traversed the marshy terrain, shivering in the cold. He realized he was a solitary traveler, potentially exiled forever from Nibiru. No one in this new world had greeted him, leaving him alone once again. Memories of his family, his reign, the battle with Anu, the perils he had faced, and the hammered bracelet flooded his mind. Was he forever banished from Nibiru? Forever? Anguish gripped his chest, prompting him to retreat to the safety of his ship, where he sought nourishment and drink. That's when a profound sleep overcame him, a powerful lethargy that sent him into slumber, once again succumbing to unconsciousness. Alalu had fallen asleep while his thoughts were consumed by history and all that he knew. Alalu had received proper training and preparation. He had been among the great, the wise, the scholars, and the commanders. Anyone who believed that Alalu was merely a supporting actor in this story was mistaken. Alalu had learned extensively from his ancestor, Anshargal, acquiring knowledge of the sky and its circuits. With Enshar, his understanding was further expanded in a magnificent manner. As a profound connoisseur, Alalu engaged in conversations with sage scholars and commanders, greatly enriching his knowledge. It was in that environment where he learned about the secret from the beginning. And it is this secret that Alalu possessed, leading him to the distant planet beyond the hammered bracelet, which we shall now discover. In the beginning, when the gods of the heavens had not yet been summoned into existence, and in the key below, the solid ground had not yet been named, there existed the Apsu alone in the void, the primordial begetter. In the heights of above, the celestial gods had not yet been created, and in the waters below, the heavenly gods had not yet emerged. Above and below, none of the gods had taken form, and no destinies had been decreed. Apsu reigned alone in the void. And then, with the Apsu winds, the primordial waters merged, and a spell was cast. A deep slumber fell upon the depths of the void, and Tiamat, the mother of all, was created to be his wife, a celestial mother abundant in water. Alongside him, Apsu brought Mumu and appointed him as his messenger to present Tiamat. Thus, Apsu bestowed a resplendent gift upon his wife, a shining metal, the eternal gold, meant for her alone to possess. And then the two mingled their waters, giving birth to the rest of the divine children, the very planets through which Alalu had journeyed. At that time, Nibiru had not yet been brought forth, and the earth had not yet been called into existence. The celestial waters remained united, and there was no hammered bracelet, nor had any circuits or orbits been established. Enraged by the absence of rest, the absence of traced destinies and established circuits, Tiamat formed an army against Apsu and claimed him as her firstborn. She named him Kingu and elevated him to the rank of An. She placed a tablet of destiny upon his chest, allowing him to acquire his own circuit, and instructed Kingu to wage war against the gods. During that period, a god was begotten, a cunning creator forged him, the son of his own son. Emerging from the depths where he was crafted, he separated himself, carrying with him the seed of life, a divine gift. Aimlessly, it wandered through space, attracting all others. Its name was Nibiru, destined to be forever known as the Crossing. Nibiru joined the troops, the Brethren, and became the Avenger, confronting Tiamat. It found its path ahead of its brethren, and thus the celestial battle commenced. The moon of Nibiru and Tiamat clashed face to face. The evil wind from Nibiru struck deep within Tiamat, and with several blows, Tiamat became a lifeless corpse. Depleted of strength, her forces lost their balance, and her sons, including Kingu, trembled in terror. The tablets of destinies were torn away by the Lord, and new battles ensued. In the end of the battle, the hammered bracelet found its course, as did the other sons and daughters. Nibiru harbored the seed of life, and Ki, Earth, was formed. Kingu was destined to light up Earth's night eternally. Nibiru was then exalted. The true son of the sun, forged in the depths, greatest of all, let him rule. Nibiru shall keep the crossing of heaven and earth, and crossing has become his name. None of the gods will cross above or below. Your destiny is, and forever will be, to take the measure of Ashar. And this was the secret from the beginning, and the battle of the gods, which Alalu knew all. Finding gold on the hammered bracelet was confirmation. The gold on the hammered bracelet was a hint of gold on top of ancient Tiamat. The secret of the beginning that he had been taught began to show clear signs of its veracity. And thus, Alalu awoke not knowing how long he had slept. The escape from Nibiru was just the beginning of a new story, a new time, and a new world. Taking courage, Alalu arose, perceiving a luminosity out of his ship, such as he had never seen on Nibiru. It was the sun. Alalu stretched a mast and gauge over the ship and tested the planet's air. It was compatible. Then he opened the ship's door, and with the hatches open, he breathed the air deeply, and then again. Ki's air was undoubtedly compatible. Then, without a protective suit, Alalu descended from his ship. The light was too bright, and the sun's rays were overwhelming. He had to go back and put on a mask to protect his eyes, and he took the opportunity to equip himself with a gun with a collector. He stepped onto the dark ground and walked into the swamp. With the collector, he tested the water, but it was not fit for consumption. The waters were murky, dark, and greenish, and there was one more important detail that caught his eye. There were fish, a lot of fish. Alalu went towards the hills. He passed among the vegetation and appreciated the bushes that gave way to trees full of fruit. Then he took one of its fruits and put it in his mouth. The taste was sweet. Walking on his feet, he could feel the moisture, and he walked towards it. He found a pond of silent waters. Once again, he inserted the collector into the waters, but this time it was different. It was possible to drink the water. Joy had taken over his entire body. The new world had breathable air, fruit that could be eaten, and water to drink. That's when a sound, a hissing, distracted him. Gun in hand, he looked for the source of the sound and, having found it, fired. The sound ended and the hissing ceased. Then he saw a motionless body lying dead. The creature had fierce eyes in its small head, and a huge tongue stuck out of its mouth. The body was slender as a rope, without hands or feet. It was a crawling creature. Alalu wondered what kind of creature it was. He had never seen anything like it on Nibiru. Was it a guardian, a master of water? Unanswered, Alalu left the creature behind and found his way back to the ship. Before that, he collected water and fruits. During the journey, the sun's rays sharply diminished, and thus Alalu was astonished. It got dark, very dark. The suddenness with which it had gone dark was surprising, and over the marsh, a light rose on the horizon. A huge red ball that, as it rose, turned white. Alalu was thrilled as he gazed at the infinite expanse of the firmament from his ship, contemplating the possibilities of a new world. Along his journey, he observed the planets and traversed the hammered bracelet, eventually arriving at Ki. From there, he witnessed Kingu glowing in the darkness of the night. Alalu decided to await the rise of a new day to investigate the presence of gold. If the secret from the beginning held true, then the waters of Tiamat's golden veins would be found in the cut half of Ki. At sunrise, Alalu disembarked from his ship with the necessary equipment and began searching for the waters. Inserting the required tools, he closely observed the meter, symbols, and numbers as they filled in, unveiling the truth. It was indeed true. The secret from the beginning had entrusted him with a monumental task and reserved celestial royalty for him. He had discovered gold in Ki. There was gold on Earth. Overwhelmed by an unprecedented enthusiasm, Alalu hastily re-entered his ship, clutching the Tablet of Destinies. Addressing his message to the depths of space directed towards Nibiru, he declared,
"Attention, Nibiru. I repeat, attention, planet Nibiru. It is your king who speaks to you, your former king. I departed aboard one of the celestial ships, staking my life on the fortune of my endeavors. With great skill, I managed to breach the hammered bracelet. The path was paved by rocks, leading to the kingship of Nibiru, and I arrived at the planet Ki. It possesses fruits, water, and air compatible with life. I, Alalu, am the first Anunnaki to set foot on this planet of salvation. I have discovered gold, yes, gold in Ki. The fate of Nibiru now rests in my hands. Bow before your new king, for my royalty is divine. Pay attention and heed my conditions."
The news of Alalu's survival reached the royal palace on Nibiru and was transmitted via radio communication. Anu and the counselors, as well as the sages, were astonished. They had all believed that Alalu had perished. The commanders were swiftly instructed to inspect all the ships and discovered that one of them had indeed vanished, presumably taken by Alalu. With this confirmation, Anu contemplated how to proceed and decided to send greetings to Alalu. "Anu, the king of Nibiru, extends his salutations to you. There was no reason for you to depart, dear Alalu. Know that there is no enmity in my heart. If you have truly discovered gold, let the glory of Nibiru be exalted, and let salvation be achieved," conveyed Anu's message. Alalu received Anu's greetings on Earth and responded in a belligerent tone, readily stating, "If I am to be the savior, then let Nibiru prove worthy of my deeds. Summon the princes to assemble and declare my supreme ascendancy. Let the commanders accept me as their leader, bowing to my orders, proclaim me as king, and let my name supersede Anu on the throne. May the council support my words." Upon receiving Alalu's words, consternation gripped Nibiru. How could Anu be overthrown? The advisors were bewildered. Questions arose about Alalu's whereabouts. Was it truly possible that he had discovered the gold of salvation? What if it was a deception? One of the counselors, the eldest among them, spoke up in the assembly. He proclaimed, "I was Alalu's mentor. He was an attentive student. He possesses knowledge of the celestial battle, the colossal watery monster Tiamat, and the golden veins. If Alalu has indeed breached the hammered bracelet and found his destiny on the seventh planet, known as Ki, then he may have succeeded." A prince then voiced his opinion, stating, "Alalu cannot dictate terms. The calamities were a result of his actions, and he lost his throne in combat. Even if he has found the gold, it must be substantiated. And even if he has found the gold, will it be sufficient?" There was silence. The one who spoke at the assembly was Enlil, the Lord of Command. Enlil is the son of Anu and his legitimate wife, Queen Antu. The assembly's decision was transmitted to Alalu, the first Anunnaki to arrive on Earth. He carefully considered each point, treating it like a chess game. Alalu agreed and recounted his journey, detailing the dangers he had faced. He presented a crystal from the sampler and his crystal heart from the collector, inserting these objects into the transmitter for verification. After sending the evidence, he introduced new elements of his proposal. He declared, "Now that you have the proof, crown me as king and submit to my commands." Alalu's words were stern and sharp, causing the sages to be horrified. However, they found that the location Alalu spoke of was indeed far beyond the hammered bracelet. The assembly convened once more to discuss the matter. Anu's eldest son, Ea, who was married to Damkina, Alalu's daughter, spoke up. He was known as the one whose home was water and would later be known as Enki, the Lord of Earth. For clarity, we will refer to him as Enki throughout the story. Enki stated, "My birth father is Anu, and by marriage, Alalu turns out to be my father as well. The intention of my marriage was to unite the clans. Allow me to bring unity to this conflict. Let me be Anu's emissary. I will take the gold from Alalu and deliver it to Nibiru. I will proclaim Alalu as king on earth. If salvation truly reaches Nibiru, let a new battle determine the throne of Nibiru." Enki's words were wise and resonated throughout the assembly hall. The advisors agreed, and Anu rendered the verdict, saying, "So be it. A new battle shall be bestowed upon Alalu. Let the victorious one be the king of Nibiru." The decision was conveyed to Alalu, who accepted it, saying, "I will receive Enki on earth, and may he obtain the gold from the waters and carry out the tests. In the future, let a new battle for the throne of Nibiru take place." Enki addressed the commanders at the ship's location and began preparations for the mission. Instead of employing the terror weapons used by Alalu, Enki would utilize water. However, a question arose. If water was the force and not fire, where would it be replenished? It was necessary to store water in the ship. Thus, studies and preparations continued for a complete Shar. It was decided to use the largest celestial ship available for the mission's return. The destination was calculated, and a tablet of destiny was secured. 50 heroes were chosen to participate in the mission. Anu approved the journey, and the Anunnaki boarded the ship, wearing eagle helmets and fish garments. Enki humbly knelt before his father Anu to receive the royal blessing. Anu spoke, "Enki, my dear eldest son, this will be a long trip. May you go and return safely, and may your success surpass us on Nibiru." Enki bid farewell to his mother Ninul and his wife Damkina before joining the celestial ship. He was the last to embark. Then Anzu, the commander and pilot, whose name means "he who knows the heavens," lifted the enormous craft above Nibiru's skies, commencing the mission that would soon reach Earth. The ship respectfully passed by all the planets that honored Nibiru's royalty, until it encountered the formidable and challenging hammered bracelet, the asteroid belt. The mission had been meticulously calculated and prepared, so that with jets of water, rather than terrifying weapons as Alalu had used before, the gigantic rocks of the asteroid belt could be cleared. The shouts of joy erupted as the hammered bracelet gave way, but soon turned into apprehension. Anzu sounded the alarm. More water than planned had been used to clear the path between the rocks. There would be no water left to fuel the ship's flaming stones for the remainder of the journey. At the forefront of the colossal Anunnaki ship was Lamu, the red planet later known as Mars. Anzu, the skilled pilot, slowed down the ship and circled the edge of a lake before landing smoothly. Enki and Anzu both put on their eagle helmets and descended to solid ground. An order was given to draw water from the lake into the ship using a water-sucking pipe, and it was done. With the ship resupplied, the giant vessel embarked once again, heading towards its final destination, planet Earth. As they approached Earth and intercepted Alalu's transmitting signal, they beheld the oceans and the dry land, contrasting with the snowy regions covering 2/3 of the planet. However, as they drew nearer, they sensed the planet's strong gravitational pull and the weight of the snow, making it challenging to land in the swampy region. Anzu circled the entire planet once more, seeking a way to decelerate the ship and bring it closer to the ground. Finally, the enormous ship descended onto the waters of Earth. It was at this moment that a message reached the ship. Alalu said, "Welcome to Earth." The massive ship received the signal, and Anzu guided the spaceship towards Alalu like a floating vessel. "Hurry!" exclaimed Alalu. "Make haste!" Anzu instructed all the Anunnaki on board to don their fish costumes. The ship's door opened, and the heroes descended from the vessel. However, Enki found himself without a fish suit. His heart pounded like a drum as he swam freely, realizing that the waters were deeper than he had imagined. Upon reaching the bank, he spotted Alalu, who embraced him and exclaimed, "Welcome, my son-in-law. Welcome to a new planet." As the heroes proceeded, Alalu greeted them and extended a warm welcome. Enki addressed the remaining Anunnaki, stating, "Here on Earth, I am the commander. We have embarked on a crucial mission, one that holds the future of Nibiru in our hands. It is a matter of life or death. Let us begin our work. Anzu, inform the king, my father, of our joyful arrival on this planet." Soon, the sky transformed into shades of red, orange, and darkness. Alalu explained, "A night on Earth is unlike anything you can imagine. Let us take this opportunity to rest. Before you know it, the sun will herald a new day." And so, night fell, giving way to a new day. With the dawn, Enki assigned specific tasks to some of the Anunnaki: Engur, the Lord of Fresh Waters, Enkimdu, responsible for the ditches and dikes, and Belulu, in charge of the swamps, Isimud to distinguish fruits, and Guru with overseeing the cultivation of crops. Camps were erected, ditches and dikes were constructed. Kula produced clay bricks, Mushdamu laid the foundations, Inursag studied serpents and slithering snakes, while Ulmash examined water creatures and birds, categorizing and studying them. 6 days passed, and on the 7th day, Enki declared, "We have come from afar, traversed great distances, established our camp, and observed everything around us. Let us name our fenced-in building Home Away from Home and designate it as Eridu." True to his word, Enki appointed Alalu as the commander of Eridu. He further added, "Let this 7th day be consecrated as our day of rest, a tradition we shall uphold." Once the day of rest concluded, the search for gold began. Enki spent 6 consecutive days extracting metals from marshy waters. On the 7th day, Enki and Alalu examined the collected metals. Iron and copper were present, but gold was scarce. They diligently separated the metals, and on the subsequent 7th day, they rested. This pattern continued as they filled and emptied crystal vessels for 6 days, counting the metals on the 7th day. Gold remained in the smallest of piles. Throughout their labor, Enki marveled at the moon, Kingu. What peculiar connection existed between the moon and Earth? What celestial significance lay within? Enki referred to the full circle of the moon as a month. They toiled with the metals for several months. Eventually, Enki witnessed the sun, and every 6 months, he assigned a name to the hot or cold season. Winter and summer emerged, and Enki designated it as the Earth's year. At the conclusion of each year, he tallied the accumulated gold. And with the levels of gold in an alarming situation, the Anunnaki decided to sink their ship into the waters in search of gold in the depths. Soon, they could observe that Nibiru was approaching. Anu asked about the amount of gold, but it was insufficient. Therefore, it was decided to wait for one more Shar. With more time on Earth, the ship's components were separated, and Enki built a chamber. Using the chamber, Enki and Abgal flew low over the Earth, observing and studying the planet. Enki became intrigued and discussed with Alalu the whereabouts of Tiamat's golden veins. Back on Nibiru, apprehension grew. Gold was not only desired, but essential. Protests increased, and Anu declared, "Hand over whatever gold you have, repair Alalu's ship, and may he bring gold to Nibiru." Enki took the terrifying weapons from Alalu's ship and concealed them in a distant and secret location. Anzu worked on preparing Alalu's ship for the journey to Nibiru, ready to deliver the gold as soon as the Shar ended. It didn't take long for Anzu to notice the absence of the terrifying weapons. These weapons should not be used in the skies or on land. However, without them, it is dangerous to cross the hammered bracelet. Alalu's ship doesn't have water jets, I must remind you, Anzu expressed. The words of the Anunnaki on Earth reached the Council of Nibiru. The risk was that they might not be able to return. Abgal then took the opportunity to express his willingness to take this risk. "I will deliver the gold to Nibiru," he said. The astronomers studied the optimal moment, and Abgal set out on the journey towards Nibiru, carrying the gold of salvation with him. On Nibiru, people awaited the salvation brought by the gold. Abgal endured the scorching heat as he entered the planet's atmosphere and skillfully steered the craft to the designated landing spot. The crowd applauded and revered this act of heroism. As soon as the ship's doors opened, Anu, the king of Nibiru, warmly welcomed Abgal. Meanwhile, other Anunnaki unloaded the gold from the ship and transported it to the appropriate location. Soon, the gold would be processed into the finest powder and scattered into the atmosphere. During the assembly of the Anunnaki, Anu declared, "Salvation is here. The gold of salvation has arrived." Despite Anu's words of glory and exaltation, apprehension gripped the people. Were the theories correct? Would the powdered gold be able to seal the holes in the atmosphere? And the answer was affirmative. The rift that had received the gold was closing, and the royal palace was filled with joy. However, due to the proximity of the sun, the gold particles were deflected and the crack reopened. Anu commanded, "Abgal, return to Earth immediately. We need abundant gold. Nungal and other Anunnaki will accompany you. Leave as soon as possible." Thus, Abgal and the other Anunnaki departed from Nibiru, heading back to Earth. Upon their arrival, they were welcomed in Eridu by Enki. After the initial greetings, the extraction of gold began swiftly. However, what they observed was worrisome. The amount of gold was insufficient. Day after day, Enki and Alalu exchanged glances and conversations. Both were intrigued, their hearts heavy with concern. Where could abundant gold be found? Where were Tiamat's golden veins? Enki embarked on exploratory flights, familiarizing himself with the mountains and valleys. However, further exploration was necessary to find a solution. He ventured across the lands separated by oceans, and finally, the depths of the earth unveiled themselves. It was there, where the dry lands split in two and the earth took the shape of a heart at the bottom, that the golden veins of the earth's depths would be abundant. Enki named the area Abzu and declared, "There is much gold in Abzu." Enki conveyed the news to the Council of Nibiru, leading to the formation of a new assembly. The news brought a sense of hope throughout the planet Nibiru. The only certainty was the necessity to explore and extract gold. However, the question that remained unanswered was how to obtain this precious metal. During the assembly of the gods, Enki's half-brother Enlil spoke up. First, Alalu, and now Enki. Everyone eagerly anticipates salvation from generation to generation. But now we hear different words. We face a task beyond imagination. To accomplish it, we require evidence of the existence of golden veins and a plan for our success. A great division emerged within the assembly. It was then that Anu took the floor and made a decision. Let Enlil journey to Earth, gather the necessary evidence, and forge a plan. The assembly unanimously agreed. Everyone consented. The message was conveyed to Earth, and Anu commanded, "Henceforth, Enlil shall assume command. His word shall be law." Enlil began preparing for his mission to Earth, accompanied by Lieutenant Chief Alulgar. Upon Enlil's arrival on Earth, his brother Enki warmly embraced him, welcoming him with open arms. However, Alalu's welcome was less cordial, as he merely beckoned with a simple gesture. The rest of the Anunnaki eagerly awaited Enlil, eager to commence their work. The newly appointed mission commander for Earth ordered the construction of small ships for exploration. Enki and Abgal boarded one ship to lead the way across the Abzu, while Enlil and Alalgar followed in another spacecraft. They tested the soil of Abzu and discovered gold, although it was mixed with sand and rocks. They returned to Eridu. In Eridu, Enlil addressed the assembly, announcing the commencement of a new mission. He presented a grand plan and proposed a significant undertaking. Enlil explained the necessity of expanding Eridu and bringing new Anunnaki from Nibiru. It was crucial to establish new settlements to extract the gold, separate it from the surrounding mixture, and transport it using celestial ships. The plan was detailed and appeared effective. However, Enki and Alalu exchanged glances. Enki raised a question. Who shall govern the settlements? Who shall oversee Abzu? Alalu added, and who will be in charge of the new Eridu and the settlements? Anzu spoke up, asking, who will command the ships and designate the landing site? Enlil swiftly responded, let Anu come to Earth and make these decisions himself. And so it was decided. Nungal was chosen as the pilot, and together Anu and Nungal departed from Nibiru, bound for Earth. Enki provided boats to receive the Anunnaki as they descended from the spaceships onto the water. As soon as he spotted Anu, his father, he bowed and embraced him, saying, "My dear son, my eldest son." Then Anu journeyed to Eridu, where he was received by Enlil, Alalu, and the other Anunnaki who now held the royalty of Nibiru on Earth. Enlil warmly and respectfully greeted his father, while Alalu hesitantly welcomed Anu as one would receive a friend. A dinner was held in honor of the king of Nibiru, after which he retired to the cabin prepared by Enki. The following day, Anu visited the Abzu to explore the area and assess the gold reserves. However, Anu was perplexed. "Extracting the gold will not be easy," he said, "but it must be done." Enki and Enlil were entrusted with the task of constructing tools and ensuring the feasibility of gold extraction. Days and nights passed until a meeting took place in Eridu. Enki spoke first. "I was the one who founded Eridu. However, other settlements need to be established in the region. Let the land be known as Eden, and may I have authority over it. Enlil, you will be responsible for gold extraction." Enlil became enraged and exclaimed, "This plan is unfair. When it comes to commands and plans, I excel." Enki, on the other hand, is known for his knowledge of Earth and its secrets. Shall Enki become the lord of the Abzu, while I become the lord of Eden? The brothers, Enki and Enlil, engaged in a fervent argument. Anu listened attentively and reflected upon the situation. Enki was the firstborn, but Enlil was his legitimate son with Antu, the queen. Anu noticed that their discussions tended to have a cyclical nature, with no clear resolution. Moreover, someone had to return to Nibiru, as both Eden and the Abzu required leadership. After careful consideration, Anu made an announcement. "Let luck decide what will happen, and let the three of us reach a decision. Let fate speak for itself." The decision was left to chance, and Anu would return to Nibiru as the ruler. Enlil would assume the position of Lord of Command in Eden, while Enki would become the Lord of the Abzu. Thus, Anu declared, "Enlil, you shall expand the settlements in Eden and oversee the loading of gold onto the ships. You will be responsible for commanding the Anunnaki until the lands reach the water's boundaries. May Ea, my firstborn, now known as Enki, be recognized as the Lord of Earth and the first to set foot on it. Let him govern the Abzu." Enlil responded, "Enki, Lord of Earth, that shall be your title. As for me, I will be known as the Lord of Command." The decision was conveyed to the other Anunnaki during an assembly, and Anu expressed his confidence, saying, "I will return to Nibiru with a light heart. Success is within reach." But Alalu stood before them proclaiming, "An important matter has been forgotten," he shouted. "The dominion of Earth had been promised to me. This is what was said when I announced my arrival and the discovery of gold. Furthermore, I have not renounced my claims to the throne of Nibiru. It is an abomination that you should share everything with your children. You owe me a fight for the throne of Nibiru." Enraged, Anu retorted, "Then let us fight for the throne of Nibiru without delay. The time for waiting is over. This battle must occur now." What ensued was an unparalleled clash. The two esteemed individuals from Nibiru had descended upon a new world, carrying within them the untamed ferocity of wild beasts. Once again, Alalu found himself defeated, collapsing to the ground. Anu stood triumphantly over him, proclaiming, "I have emerged victorious, Alalu! You are vanquished!" However, Alalu responded with a sarcastic smile and swiftly exerted his strength on Anu, seizing him by the legs. In a shocking act, he bit into Anu's private parts and swallowed them. Stunned, Anu tumbled to the ground. Enki hurried to Anu's aid, while Enlil apprehended Alalu. "Let justice prevail," Enlil exclaimed in a fit of anger. "No, no," interjected Enki. "Justice has already been served. The poison resides within him. He ingested it himself." Alalu was imprisoned for a requisite period as dictated by the law. Anu recovered and convened a meeting of the seven who judge. Anu assumed the highest position, presiding over the gathering. Seated to his right were Enki, Anzu, and Nungal, while Enlil, Abgal, and Alalgar sat on his left. Enlil spoke up, saying, "In the name of justice, and in accordance with Alalu's decree, a new battle transpired, and Alalu suffered defeat." Enki inquired, "What is your response?" "The fight transpired in pursuit of justice, and I have relinquished the throne." Interrupting Alalu, Enlil declared, "And in his defeat, he committed an abominable crime. Death is the punishment." Enki asked once more, "What do you have to say?" Alalu remained silent for a moment, then spoke slowly and softly. "On Nibiru, I was the rightful king, and Anu served as my cupbearer. I reigned for 9 shars until Anu himself usurped my throne. We vied for rulership through single combat, and fearing for my life, I departed Nibiru and discovered a new world. Here, I found the gold of salvation, and the promise of reclaiming kingship on Nibiru was bestowed upon me. Subsequently, Enki arrived on Earth and was appointed as my successor on Nibiru. Following that, Enlil laid claim to Anu's succession for himself, and eventually Anu himself arrived. Fortune played a part and deceived Enki, who was hailed as the Lord of Earth rather than Nibiru. Enlil then assumed authority over Earth and banished Enki to the distant Abzu. My heart aches, seething with agony as he triumphantly planted his feet upon my chest. Anu spoke, "I defeated him in a fair fight, and you interfered with my lineage by devouring my manhood." Enlil spoke, "The accused has admitted to the crime. May death be your sentence." "To death," said Alalgar. "Death," said Abgal. "Death," said Nungal. Enki spoke, "Death will come naturally. Alalu swallowed Anu's entrails." Anzu in turn said, "Let Alalu be bound to earth until the end of his days." The king of Nibiru pondered, and then declared, "Die in exile. Alalu must perish in exile." Everyone exchanged glances as Anu explained his decision. "When I return to Nibiru, Alalu shall accompany me on my ship. However, he will not set foot on Nibiru. We will orbit Lahmu, where there is water and a breathable atmosphere. Alalu shall spend the remainder of his days in solitude on Lahmu. We can use a small celestial ship for a safe landing." The decision was unanimous. Anu continued, "Nungal will pilot the great ship. I will remain on Nibiru while Nungal returns with other Anunnaki from Nibiru to Earth for gold mining. Anzu will join us to transport Alalu on the small ship." And so it was done. Anu bid farewell to his sons and the remaining Anunnaki. Then, the Nibiru royalty departed from planet Earth. As they approached Lahmu to exile Alalu in the vicinity of the Red Planet, Anzu spoke up. "I will not return with the small celestial ship. I will land on Lamu with Alalu and remain by his side. When he succumbs to the poison in his entrails, I will give him a burial befitting a king. As for myself, I have already made my name. Others will speak of me as the companion of a king in exile. I have witnessed and will witness things that others will not on this strange planet facing the unknown. My name will be remembered as that of a hero. Alalu was in tears, and Anu was amazed. Then he spoke, I raise my hand before you, O Anzu, and swear this oath to you. On the next journey, a ship will encircle Lamu and land in your presence. If I find you alive, you shall be proclaimed the ruler of Lamu, and once a station is established there, you shall be its commander. Anzu nodded in gratitude and agreement, and preparations for the installation in the small ship commenced. They were provided with supplies and fish suits equipped with eagle helmets. The ship departed towards Lamu, gradually vanishing on the horizon. For 9 shars, Alalu reigned as the king of Nibiru. For 8 shars, he commanded Eridu on earth. However, in the 9th shar, fortune turned against him, and he met his demise in exile on Lamu. On Earth, a lengthy discussion ensued to determine the next course of action. Enki requested Alalgar to oversee Eridu, while he himself went to the Abzu. There he designed and devised technological equipment to penetrate the depths of the Earth and explore its innermost regions. He sent the plans to Nibiru for the engineers to construct. In Eden, Enlil meticulously surveyed the activities, carefully numbering the mountains, valleys, rivers, and plains. He found great pleasure in the snow-capped mountains of northern Eden and began preparations for a celestial ship platform, a personal endeavor of his. Meanwhile, the royal ship journeyed through space towards Nibiru, where Anu received a joyful welcome. He issued instructions to establish intermediary stations, with Lamu being the first and Kingu as the second. Anu initiated new studies of all the planets and envisioned a caravan of celestial ships traveling between Nibiru and Earth, tracing various routes. To accomplish this, he introduced a new class of spaceships and selected new Anunnaki members to learn and train for the mission. Anu transmitted the plans to Enki and Enlil on Earth and received blueprints from Enki's team of engineers to construct the necessary equipment. Subsequently, a new mission from Nibiru embarked towards Earth, consisting of 50 chosen women. Among them was Ninma, the esteemed lady, who also happened to be the half-sister of Enki and Enlil and the daughter of Anu. Ninma possessed great knowledge in the field of medicine and was skilled in the art of healing. She had heard of the vertigo caused by the sun and Earth's rotational cycle, so she prepared a remedy for it. As promised by Anu, the mission from Nibiru encircled Lamu. When they approached the ship, they discovered Anzu near a river, lifeless. Ninma immediately took charge and began her actions. She retrieved the pulsator from her bag and aimed it at Anzu's heart. Then she took out the emitter and directed the life-giving emissions of its crystals towards Anzu's body. Ninma repeated this process 60 times, directing the pulsator and emitter towards Anzu. On the 60th attempt, Anzu opened his eyes and moved his lips. Ninma poured the water of life over him and moistened his lips with it, then placed the food of life in his mouth. And thus, a miracle occurred. Anzu rose from the dead. Upon regaining consciousness, he recounted Alalu's final moments and how he had prepared his funeral by covering the mountain that rose from the plain with stones. The Anunnaki then carved Alalu's face upon the rocky mountain and left it exposed. Ninma declared, "Let Alalu's face eternally behold the land where he found gold. And as for you, Anzu, King Anu, my father has commanded the fulfillment of the promise made to you. 20 men will accompany you here on Lamu, and a way station must be built. Spaceships will depart Earth and arrive here, laden with gold. The gold stored here will be collected by celestial ships that will transport it to Nibiru. Anzu, you shall be the commander of Lamu. My life belongs to you, O Ninma, the great lady. My gratitude towards Anu knows no bounds." And then the celestial ship carrying Ninma and the other Anunnaki departed from Lamu towards Earth. Anzu and other Anunnaki remained on Lamu with the intention of creating an intermediary way station. Meanwhile, the gigantic ship was heading towards Earth, observing the moon and analyzing the possibility of another way station. Nungal led the ship to the ditch in the waters closest to Eridu, where they disembarked on a pier built by Enlil. Vessels were no longer needed. Enki and Enlil welcomed their sister Ninma. She informed them about all the news, what had happened on Nibiru, the death of Alalu, the survival of Anzu on Lamu, and the construction of the way station. Enki expressed his approval, while Enlil was perplexed. Ninma said, "Anu's decisions are unalterable. It's his word, and I have more news. I brought relief from illness. I brought the seeds of healing." From her pouch, Ninma drew the seeds. They need to be planted, and after their growth, a juice can be made. The Anunnaki must drink this juice, and then all diseases will disappear, said Ninma. But these seeds must be sown in a warm and cool place. They require heat and water to thrive. Enlil invited Ninma to come to the ship. "I know the perfect spot for it," he said. Thus, the two brothers entered the ship and headed towards the snow-covered mountains next to the cedar forest. Enlil and Ninma talked and expressed their love and affection for each other. Ninma told Enlil about Ninurta, explaining that the prince was ready to join them on Earth. Enlil, the father of Ninurta, was the son of Antu, the lawful wife of Anu. He was the legal heir and successor of Anu. Ninma, the half-sister of Enlil and the mother of Ninurta, was the first daughter of Anu. Ninma was extremely beautiful and full of wisdom, and she was skillful and quick to learn. Enlil and Ninma caressed each other, but Enlil did not impregnate Ninma. Then they returned to Eridu. On the way, Enlil showed the landscape and presented the Eden in all its vastness. He explained his entire plan. Far from Eridu, where the dry land begins, will be my abode. It will be named Larsa, the place of command located on the banks of the Buranu, the river of deep waters. In the future, a city called Lagash will emerge. Between the two, I have drawn a line, and nearby there will be a city called Shurubak, the city of refuge. This will be your city. It will stand on the central line and lead to the fourth city, Nibiru. Nibiru will be the crossing point, the link between heaven and earth. It will house the tablets of destinies and control all quests. Together with Eridu, these 5 cities will exist forever. Enlil then revealed a crystal tablet with several markings and explained that in the future there will be a place for the ship to arrive from Nibiru to Earth. Ninmah was amazed at the complexity of it all. She understood Enlil's disagreement with Anu's plan and the creation of an intermediary station on Lahmu. "It is a magnificent plan," said Ninmah, visibly emotional. Enlil's plan included the creation of a city for her, a healing city, a healing station. "But," warned Ninmah, "do not go beyond this plan set by your father. Do not offend your brother Enki either. You are as wise as you are beautiful," Enlil said. Meanwhile, in the Abzu, Enki was also devising plans. His plans differed significantly from those of Enlil. He contemplated where he could construct dwellings for the Anunnaki, where he could establish his own residence, and where he could access the depths of the earth. From his celestial ship, he surveyed the entire expanse of the Abzu meticulously. The Abzu was a distant land, situated beyond the waters of the Eden, known for its abundance and perfection. The region boasted powerful rivers coursing through it. Enki built his abode near the flowing pure waters, amidst the heart of the Abzu. In this land, Enki designated the place of the deep, which allowed the Anunnaki to penetrate the depths of the earth. Through inner tunnels, they could explore the veins of precious gold. Enki arranged the necessary equipment for crushing the extracted gold, including the necessary tools and machinery. Subsequently, the gold would be transported using celestial ships to the landing place located in the Cedar Mountains. From there, spaceships would convey the gold to the way station on Lahmu. Consequently, numerous extraterrestrials arrived on the planet. Some were assigned to the Eden under Enlil's supervision, while others joined Enki in the Abzu. Another group was directed to Shurubak with Ninmah. On Nibruki, the celestial link between heaven and earth, Enlil gathered and oversaw all the missions. Enki frequently traveled between Eridu and the Abzu, diligently supervising all activities. Construction on Lahmu progressed, and the way station received a considerable workforce. Thus, 2 shars elapsed until Anu issued his official order on the 7th day. On Earth, this was considered the 7th day, a day of rest originally decreed by Enki. 600 individuals assembled to heed Anu's proclamation. Enki was accompanied by his vizier Isimud, Nungal the pilot, Alagar, the lord of Eridu, and Abgal, who commanded the landing place. In the Aden, Enlil observed the transmission alongside Ninmah and her entourage of maidens. On Lahmu, various workers congregated with Anzu. It was then that Anu spoke. "You are heroes, the true saviors of Nibiru. The fate of our entire planet rests in your hands. Your deeds will be eternally remembered, and your names will be revered. Henceforth, those on earth shall be known as the Anunnaki, meaning those who came from heaven to earth. And those residing on Lahmu shall be called the Igigi, signifying those who observe and see. Everything is now prepared. Let the flow of gold commence, and let Nibiru be saved." However, Anu, distant on Nibiru, could not foresee the impending turmoil. It began with the predicament involving their own offspring, long before the arrival of the Anunnaki on Earth. Enki, as the eldest son of Anu, was not the legitimate heir due to his status as the son of a concubine. Ninmah, the eldest daughter, had been chosen by Anu to marry Enki, his eldest son. The intention was for the firstborn of this union to possess a double inheritance and become the rightful successor. However, Ninmah was in love with her half-brother, Enlil. Consequently, Enlil impregnated Ninmah, and Ninurta, the prince who would soon be on Earth, was born as the son of Enlil and Ninmah. Enraged at the time, and still on Nibiru, Anu forbade Ninmah from marrying anyone. Consequently, Enki married a princess, the daughter of Allalu, the beautiful Damkina. Enki and Damkina had a son named Marduk, whose name meant one born in a pure place. Enki, Anu's eldest son, had a son named Marduk through marriage. On the other hand, Enlil, Anu's rightful heir, had a son named Ninurta, but not through marriage. Enlil's story in this regard unfolded on Earth rather than Nibiru. Enlil fell in love with Sud, one of Ninmah's maidens, while she was bathing in a cold mountain. Enlil took Sud to his abode in the cedar grove and offered her the elixir of the fruit of Nibiru, which grew on Earth. The two drank it, and Enlil expressed his intentions. However, Sud revealed her virginity and that she had never been kissed. Nonetheless, Enlil laughed and kissed her, impregnating her with the seed of life. Ninmah considered this act immoral and accused Enlil before the seven who judge. Enlil was sentenced to exile in a land of no return, far away from all cities. Abgal, Enlil's pilot, transported him to a distant land amidst inhospitable mountains. Descending the ship to the ground, Abgal said, "Enlil, I did not choose this place by chance. In a nearby cave, Enki hid the weapons of terror that were in Allalu's ship. Take possession of the weapons, and you will regain your freedom." Having said that, Abgal departed, leaving Enlil alone in that place. In the Eden, Sud confided in her commander, Ninmah, revealing that she was pregnant with Enlil's child. Ninmah conveyed the news to Enki, the Lord of Earth, who was then supreme on Earth. Enki decided to summon the seven who judge, and during the trial, Sud was questioned about the possibility of accepting Enlil as her husband. After accepting, Enlil returned from exile to marry Sud, now known as Ninlil, the Lady of the Mandate. They had a son named Nannar, the Bright One. Nannar was said to be the first child of two Anunnaki conceived on Earth, a royal seed from Nibiru conceived on Earth. As soon as Nannar, the son of Enlil and Ninlil, was born, Enki approached Ninmah to talk. He had built his house in the Abzu and adorned it with a bright metal he called silver, as well as lapis lazuli. Enki invited his half-sister to join him in the Abzu and forsake her devotion to Enlil. In the Abzu, Enki reminded Ninmah of their engagement and their love. They kissed, and Enki asked Ninmah to bear him a son. From their union, a daughter was born, disappointing Enki. Ninmah encouraged him to embrace their daughter, but Enki insisted, "I will have a son with you, my sister." Thus, they engaged in another relationship, and another daughter was born. Enki cried out, "A son! I need a child! I need a boy!" In a fit of rage, Ninmah pronounced a curse on Enki, wishing that all food would become poison in his viscera, causing pain in his jaw, teeth, and ribs. Enki's vizier, Isimud, summoned the Anunnaki to implore Ninmah for relief from the curse. Enki vowed to distance himself from Ninmah's private parts, and one by one she removed all ailments from Enki's body. Ninmah returned to Eden without marrying anyone, as commanded by her father Anu. In turn, Enki brought his son Marduk and his wife Damkina to Earth. Enki had 5 more children with Damkina, as well as with concubines. Their names were Nergal, Gibel, Ninagal, Ningishsida, and Dumuzi, the youngest son. On the other side of Anu's generation, Enlil and Ninmah brought their son Ninurta to Earth. Additionally, Enlil had another son named Ishkur with his wife Ninlil. The Anunnaki on Earth, or the sons of Anu, included Enki, the firstborn of Anu with a concubine, Ninmah, the first daughter of Anu, and Enlil, the son of Anu with Queen Antu. Enlil had 3 sons, Nannar, the first son of 2 Anunnaki born on Earth, Ishkur, and Ninurta, son of Enlil and Ninmah, born on Nibiru and brought to Earth. Enki was the father of Marduk, who was the son of Enki and his wife Damkina, in addition to the 2 daughters he had with Ninmah and the Anunnaki children Nergal, Gibil, Ninagal, Ningishsida, and Dumuzi. In this way, 2 clans settled on Earth, and later they would engage in war. In the Abzu, gold was extracted from Earth's golden veins and transported to the landing place. The Igigi then carried the gold to a way station on Lamu using spaceships. From Lamu, the precious metal was delivered to Nibiru in celestial ships. On Nibiru, the gold was finely ground into powder and spread into the atmosphere for the planet's protection. Gradually, Earth's gold healed Nibiru's wounds, holes, and cracks. Enki built a magnificent dwelling in Eridu and elevated it from earth to heaven like a mountain. He brought Damkina and Marduk to live with him and proceeded to teach Marduk various things. Meanwhile, on Nibruki, Enlil established a dazzling construction that served as a link between heaven and earth. Their words reached Lamu and Nibiru. The rays emanating from their construction could penetrate the heart of all lands, allowing them to observe everything. From atop the chamber, Enlil studied and observed everything, including the secrets of the sun and the moon, which he recorded in secret formulas. He refined the celestial zenith, established the 12 houses, and marked the sun's family with 12 emblems. The tablets of destinies gleamed in their royal abode, while the working class toiled diligently. The Earth's cycles astonished them, and they received small quantities of the healing elixir. The Anunnaki in Eden grew weary, and the work in the Abzu was arduous. The Igigi on Lamu constantly complained. At Anu's command, Anzu, the commander of Lamu, was received on Earth. Enki and Enlil revealed to him the secrets of the Abzu and the heaven-earth link on Nibruki. Anzu defended the Igigi of Lahmu, who requested rest on Earth whenever spaceships traveled between Earth and Lamu. Received in Enlil's chamber, Anzu intended to steal the tablets of destinies. He was a prince among princes and had promised relief to the Igigi. Enlil left the shrine, and Anzu remained at the entrance without arousing suspicion. Then he seized the tablets of destinies and departed from the celestial chamber towards the landing place, where the Igigi had gathered, awaiting his return to declare Anzu the king of the earth and Lahmu. From the top of the chamber, Enlil, perceiving the theft and afflicted with treachery, angrily questioned Enki about Anzu's identity. In Nibruki, the Anunnaki sought the words of Anu. The order was to stop Anzu and retrieve the Tablets of Destinies. But Anzu, in possession of the tablets, seemed invincible. Nevertheless, Ninurta stood ready to fight and recover what rightfully belonged to his father. Javelins were hurled at Anzu, but they missed. Arrows were launched, but they also missed him. So a mighty weapon was prepared, a Tilu missile. The instructions were for Ninurta and Anzu to approach each other, wing to wing, and launch the missile, creating a whirlwind and a storm of dust. And then, like a ball of fire, Anzu fell. The earth shook and the heavens shook. Ninurta took the Tablets of Destinies and made Anzu his prisoner. Quickly, Ninurta was applauded at the landing place, and the Anunnaki who had been taken prisoner were freed. And before the judges, Anzu was sentenced to death. Then, the life fluid of Anzu extinguished. Ninurta said, "Leave his body to the vultures." And Enki answered, "Lead Anzu's body to Lamu, that it may be buried beside Alalu. They share the same ancestral seed. Let Marduk, my son, conduct Anzu's corpse and let him rest there, becoming the commander of Lamu." Meanwhile, on Earth, Enki and Enlil discussed changes to avoid confusion. Ninurta, who was knowledgeable about the inner workings of planets, suggested the creation of a new city of metal for easier and faster shipments. Thus, those who were weary could return to Nibiru, and new Anunnaki could come to Earth in their place. In this way, construction began in the Eden, and it took 3 shars until the city of Bad Tabira was created. Ninurta, who had made the suggestion, became the first commander. The flow of gold to Nibiru became easier and faster. Many of those who were on Earth and Lamu returned to Nibiru, including Alalgar, Abgal, and Nungal. They were received as heroes by the inhabitants of the planet Nibiru, especially the younger ones who desired to participate in the missions and experience the excitement. They were unaware of the great calamities that existed on Earth, Lamu, and in the heavens. In Bad Tabira, gold was smelted and refined, and then sent to Lamu in spaceships. Pure gold was transported from Lamu to Nibiru in celestial ships. As Ninurta had conceived, gold flowed from Abzu to Nibiru. However, what went unnoticed was the discontent among the newly arrived Anunnaki. Enki, preoccupied with other matters in the Abzu, remained unaware of the situation. To address this, Enki established a new facility known as the House of Life and invited his son Ningishida to join him in its operations. Enki was particularly intrigued by certain creatures that dwelled among the tall trees, using their front paws as hands. Additionally, there were peculiar upright walking beings observed in the grassy steppes. Enki diligently delved into the secrets of life and death, equipping the House of Life with meticulously crafted tools and equipment. Engrossed and captivated, Enki devoted himself entirely to his studies. However, Ninurta, stationed in Bad Tabira, was the first to notice a decline in gold mining operations. Enlil dispatched Ninurta to the Abzu to investigate the cause, accompanied by Ennugi, the chief officer. Ennugi himself had heard first-hand complaints from the Anunnaki and relayed all he had learned to Ninurta. "The work here is unbearable," he exclaimed. Ninurta shared this matter with Enki, who promptly summoned Enlil. The commanding lord, Enlil, arrived at the Abzu and settled in a residence near the excavation site. It was then that a group of Anunnaki workers launched an assault on Ennugi, the chief mining officer. They set fire to their tools and subsequently approached Enlil's dwelling to express their grievances. Kalkal, the gatekeeper, barred the entrance and summoned Nusku, Enlil's vizier. Nusku, awakening Enlil from his rest, reported, "My lord, we are surrounded. The Anunnaki workers are here, protesting against the strenuous labor." Enki and Ninurta were summoned, and Enlil inquired, "What is happening? Who instigated this rebellion?" In unison they responded, "We did, all of us." Enlil relayed the events to Anu, who swiftly replied, "We require the gold. The work cannot cease." Enki contemplated, "The labor is indeed burdensome, as we all know. The rebellion is not against Enlil, but against the work itself." Ennugi, the chief mining officer, was released and consulted. He conveyed, "Since the heat on Earth intensified, the work has become unbearable, intolerable." Ninurta proposed, "Let the rebels return to Nibiru, and let other Anunnaki take their place." Enlil turned to Enki and asked, "Is it possible to create new tools for the Anunnaki that would alleviate the need for tunnels?" Enki responded, "Summon my son Ningishita. I must speak with him." After their conversation, Enki made an announcement. "There might be a viable solution. Let us fashion a primitive worker. Lulu shall be its name, and let this new being shoulder the burdensome toil of the Anunnaki." The Anunnaki leaders were rendered speechless. Who could have conceived such a solution? Would anyone have ever imagined it? Thus, they summoned Ninma, renowned for her healing and nurturing abilities. Ninma replied, "I have never encountered anything like this. All beings descend from a seed. Each being evolves throughout eternity from another. None emerge from nothingness." Enki smiled and said, "How right you are, my sister." Then Enki continued, "I must reveal a secret of the Abzu. The being we need already exists. All we need to do is brand it with our essence, with the essence of Nibiru, with the Anunnaki essence. Let me create Lulu, the primitive worker," Enki said.